Welcome back to Mind Change. This is the space where we challenge how leaders think, especially in the uncomfortable moments. Today, we are talking about something that can really shake your confidence. What happens when 360 feedback doesn't look the way you expected?
Yes, especially when you open those results and your heart drops.
What if your worst feedback is actually your biggest opportunity? And imagine this: you open your 360 feedback, you scroll, and suddenly you see low score. Maybe even from your manager. You didn't expect it. You thought things were going well. And now you're thinking, did I miss something? Am I underperforming? Is my potential promotion at risk? This moment might feel very personal. And there is very important part. The real danger is not the score. It's the story you start telling yourself because of it.
Yeah, great point, Elena. Because when we see negative feedback, our brain does not go into a strategy mode, it goes immediately into survival mode. And research shows that the social rejection activates the same parts in our brain and the same areas as a physical pain. So when you received the negative feedback or low score from this assessment, your nervous system immediately reacts as you are under the threat. And that's why you might be like feel defensive, become defensive, or feel ashamed, or even suddenly start doubting your entire career. But leadership maturity begins when you pause and say, this hurts, but let me understand it. And it's always better to know this result versus not to know. And a 360 assessment gives you something many professionals never get. So it gives you, first of all, clarity, not just how you see yourself, but how others experience you. And many people, um, they spend maybe years or like, I don't know, their entire career. So without knowing why they were not getting promoted, and they can assume, they can blame someone, they can guess, but they don't have data, but you do. And this data, even uncomfortable data, it's a power.
Yes, I totally agree. You can't improve what you refuse to see, and you can't grow if you're afraid of information. A 360 feedback is not a verdict. It's just a mirror, and mirrors don't define you. They just show you what's there. And once you can see this clearly, you can choose your next move. And I want to tell you something that sometimes 50% of scores doesn't mean you are a 50% leader. I want to tell you a real case from my coaching practice. My client received very high scores from almost everyone in her 360, except her manager. He gave her several 50% scores. She was shocked. She felt confused and honestly hurt. She couldn't understand why. And here's what a lot of people misunderstand. Managers not always score based on how you're performing today. Some scores based on how much more they believe you are capable of. And yeah, this is the trick. So a 50% might not mean that you're not good enough. It just means I see that you can operate at a higher level. And what really happened on our three-way session with her manager, and he just clarified that. He saw more potential in her, and that shifted everything.
Wow, I mean, great an example. And I assume that there is another possibility also. It's miscommunication. So maybe in that particular case, expectations were not clearly defined, or sometimes maybe manager feedback was not calibrated, or even certain managers, they avoid difficult conversations. And sometimes a low score says more about communicational system, yes, overall, versus someone's competence or someone's experience. However, it doesn't mean that you have to ignore it, but it means that you need, and you would truly suggest it, explore it with curiosity instead of shame. Growth doesn't come from reading your assessment. It came usually from acting on it. And so what does a mature leader do? They open the conversation with their manager or higher peers, and they ask, what does improvement look like in their eyes? For example, if those manager can provide a specific example, and what would success look like in in 3 to 6 months? Uh, I would say that clarity, and this is very important statement, that clarity reduces anxiety, but specificity reduces confusion.
Yeah, and then you define measurable outcomes, not something like you need to improve your communication, but more specific one, like more structured meetings, set clear expectations, improve your delegation, and you also need to set a timeline, because without a timeline, development becomes intention, not execution, right? And also, information creates intention, and accountability creates change. So you can absolutely work on that by yourself. There are a lot of great books, podcasts, and courses, but what we see from our practice, change is not intellectual, it's behavioral, and behavioral is emotional. When you start changing your habits, discomfort shows up, and our brain protects us from uncomfortable thoughts and tell us the story, something like, you're already doing enough, it's not the right time, or you don't have time, it is very hard.
Yeah. And often a real blocker isn't a skill, it's maybe a limiting belief. So fear of losing your authority, fear of looking incompetent, or fear of even not being good enough. And those patterns are hard to see alone. And that's why, as you mentioned earlier, that accountability matters. So it means not just to judge you, but make sure that you are not abandoned quietly your own potential and your own growth. And your assessment doesn't define you, it just directs you. Overall, it's not a punishment at all. It's just, as I mentioned, a clear direction. And it shows you where you are now and what your next level requires. And strong leaders, I mean, from everyone's experience here in this conversation, so they don't avoid feedback, but they leverage it.
Yeah, so if your results hurt, it doesn't mean that this is the end of your confidence. It means that maybe it's just the beginning of your upgrade. And instead of asking yourself, why did I get this score? Ask yourself, what is this preparing me for? And I want to say, if this episode resonated with you, please comment below if you had your experience with the feedback, how you handle it, what helped you to improve your skills, and maybe who helped you just to go through these challenges in your career and your life. And if you want more conversation like this, please subscribe to this channel. And because leadership isn't doesn't start with the position, it starts with the perspective. Thank you so much for listening us, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much.